Hey, welcome back to Brighter Ways. We're looking at Genesis chapter 46 this week. Today we're in verses 6 through 27. It's a long section, but I wanted to just point out a few things because really it's a genealogy. So verses 5 through 7, let's look at them first because it's a little bit of an introduction. It's an introduction of the following verses and tells us that Jacob and his whole family, his whole household, along with all the stuff and the animals they had, move into Egypt. No one was left behind. So that's what the first verses there talk about. Then we're told in verse 8 that the following verses are the names of the descendants of Israel who came into Egypt, Jacob and his sons. And so we start with Reuben, the firstborn, and we go through the list of people. There are a few things that I want to make note of as we look at this genealogy. First, this is not like going on a genealogical website and trying to figure out every person in a family. Right? It's not like going on some, Ancestry or whatever, and you're putting all the names, you get all the people there, all the family members all listed on there. That's not what this is about. As we mentioned when we looked at the other genealogies in Genesis, and in fact throughout the whole Bible, there is a reason why these names are recorded. It's not just for fun, there's a reason for it. There is a special purpose other than just naming family members, not just recording the names of all the people. There's usually a reason why these specific people are being recorded. And sometimes some people are left out. It's not every single person that was ever born in this family that's on there. So we got to keep that in mind as we go through the list, that these are not just, every single individual. These lists are used to prove something. When we have multiple recordings of the same families, and there are different names, different groupings, it's because those people fit into a specific purpose. The names of Jacob's family that move in Egypt are recorded in First Chronicles as well here. So we have this, and then we have First Chronicles we can look at, and there's also Numbers as well. But Moses' record has a different purpose than the chronicler does, and therefore we have different people recorded. And in fact, the names that he puts in, Moses records in Numbers, is different from what he records himself in Genesis. So there's different purposes behind these genealogies, and therefore the names, or even, maybe a secondary name of the same person might be used there too. Some are probably just the same people. They have multiple names, like most of us do today. Or you have, back then you would be named for something that would happen in your life. But, so you have those different kind of differences. We understand it. So some are probably the same people, just other names that they were known by. Now, most of the lists are fairly straightforward until we get to like Judah and Benjamin. Then we get some interesting things here. The question with Judah is, when were Hezron and Hamul born? Chronologically, it would work for Judah to be grandfather. Would it work if he would be a grandfather when he went into Egypt? And it doesn't really work time-wise. So he couldn't have been a grandfather when he arrived in Egypt. So these two boys that are mentioned here, these children must have been born after they were already in Egypt. They, quote-unquote, came into Egypt just like Manasseh and Ephraim did. They came into Egypt, but where were they born? They were born in Egypt. So it's not like they were somewhere else and then came in. They came in the family came in. So that's how it was kind of reckoned as they came in, because they didn't belong there. That's not their homeland. That's not where Ephraim and Manasseh belong. They belong in the land of Canaan. So they came into Egypt. So that makes sense. That's an easy explanation as to why those two names are on there. They weren't born in Canaan. They were probably born in Egypt. Just like his relatives Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, when we get to Benjamin's sons, now we get a little more difficulty here, because Benjamin's son, the list of his sons gets kind of crazy. Now, mathematically, if Benjamin was 30 years old when he entered in Egypt, could he have had 10 sons, like it says? Yeah, that's a definite possibility, right? We know gestation, he's 30 years old. If he got married when he was younger, it's a possibility. Could some of them have been twins or whatever? We don't have that explanation in the Bible, so there's wiggle room there, right? So it's a possibility to have that many kids in that short of time. So when we read this, we assume that when it says that these are the sons of Benjamin, that these are the children of his wife and him, right? That's what we think. These are the sons of Benjamin, so we're thinking, okay, he had a wife, and then they had kids, and so that's the sons of Benjamin. That's normally how we would read things, right? But as I've done more research on this, I have my doubts whether Benjamin actually had 10 actual sons. Now, there are 4 lists of the descendants of Benjamin in the Bible. The list here in Genesis, Numbers 26, 1 Chronicles 7, and then another in Chronicles, 1 Chronicles chapter 8. If you were to look at all those, you'll notice that there are some really big differences. In Genesis, all these men are listed as sons of Benjamin. Some of the other records, some of these sons are really grandsons. Only Bela, the firstborn, is mentioned in all 4 lists as being a son of Benjamin. In Numbers, we have that Benjamin had 5 sons. But Naaman and Ard, who are his grandsons, are also heads of families. Then you get 1 Chronicles chapter 7. Benjamin has 3 sons, Bela, Becher, and Jediael. And then in chapter 8, we have Benjamin had Bela, Ashbel, Aharah, Nohah, and Rapha, which makes 5. Some of the sons are listed in Genesis are again found here as grandsons. So what explains the discrepancies here? Are there errors here? Is there, did they just put in weird random names just for the fun of it? Or, well, what's going on here? Well, there's no errors here. We must remember that these lists are written with different purposes and at different times in history as well. Benjamin might have only had 5 sons, but 5 of his grandsons were elevated to the status of a son. So they actually became his sons legally, according to inheritance, according to tribal leadership. They were elevated, just like Jacob does with Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh and Ephraim were his grandchildren, but he says, these are now my sons. And so he takes them, puts them on his knee, and blesses them, making Manasseh and Ephraim his children, not Joseph's children. So he elevates these 2 grandsons up to the level of a status of a son. So therefore, and we could list them as Jacob's sons, really include Manasseh and Ephraim. Those are, when we talk about the 12 tribes, they actually are then legally his sons. So you have that tribal leadership going on. They were led, they were 2 different tribes, right? They became tribes of Israel. So we see that elevating, and that's probably what could have happened here with Benjamin as well. He took some of his grandsons and made them his sons. The list in Numbers that we have was recorded after the 400 years in Egypt. And it records the sons according to the clans that came out of Egypt. So it's not just specifically sons, it's talking about clans that came out of Egypt, and not the full list of all of Benjamin's sons. So that's why we have a difference here. It's not recording everybody in the family, it's recording the clans after 400 years of being in oppression in Egypt, coming out, who's left? Which clans made it? It's safe to reason that some of the family lines did not survive. Either they didn't have males to carry on the family line, or maybe they didn't have children at all, or maybe they died. And so they didn't have children to pass on that clan. So there's reasons why there would be a difference in that. Now in 1 Chronicles 7, we have 3 sons or families of Benjamin at the time, and the amount of men who are mighty warriors. It appears that the list of Benjamin's descendants in chapter 8 is to record the lineage of King Saul. So that's why that one is there. It's trying to show where King Saul came from, proving his family line back to Benjamin. So how many sons did Benjamin have? Really? Could have been 10. There's also an explanation where he could have had, maybe he did have all those, and these are just recording of children that he named the same name. That's possible. It's been done in the past. Maybe children died, and you rename your next child the child that you lost in honor of that child. It's been done throughout history. So the differences are really not, there's a lot of different options why the names are different. It doesn't mean there's errors in the Bible. That's where people like, oh, look, there's an error. Come on now. There's reasons why they're different. There's reasons that make complete sense, and there's ones that they harmonize all together. So we don't have to go with the errors that, we have to throw out the Bible because of that. People that do that are just fools, because you don't do that in normal life, so why would you do that here? All right. Now, one last thing. People have also pointed out that when Stephen is speaking before he is stoned in the book of Acts, chapter 7, he says that 75 people entered Egypt, not 70, as we have in most Bible translations like the ESV or something like that. Is this another error? Was Stephen wrong? Did he misspeak when he was about ready to be stoned? Which, you can't give the guy some slack here, man. But I don't think that's the case, because if you look at the Septuagint, or the Greek translation of the Old Testament that was done before Christ, it says that the 75 people went into the land of Egypt. And so Stephen was probably more than likely quoting the Septuagint, which he would have been familiar with. And so 75. Because some of the grandchildren were included in the total of that when they were translating the Septuagint, they added, okay, there's 75 because you have some of the grandkids. So that's how they got 75. Remember, the listing and the numbers are not always to be accurate down to the last person. It's not why they're recording those. The numbers and the record of people is for a specific purpose. So we need to know the specific purpose, and then we can figure out why they did what they did. If we don't know the specific purpose, then we don't know exactly why they did what they did. And so we can't claim that's error then, because we are lacking the necessary information to make that decision, to make that call. So for all those people out there saying, oh, there's errors, that's an error, that's numbers are wrong, and blah, 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 you don't know why they're different. So since you don't know why they're different, why they chose to make them different, doesn't mean it's an error. It just means that you don't know why it's different. That's all. So we need to be careful not to jump to conclusions. We can do that all day long with any written work. But is that faithful to the text? Because we just don't know. Now, if it said something as a definite thing and it was completely different and was wrong, then that's one thing. But having the numbers here and the way the Hebrew mind worked and recording genealogies and numbers, we got to take that into account. So we can't say it was an error. We can't say that we have it all figured out either. And so some of it is speculation on our part because we don't have that information. And that's okay. That's okay. So let's end the study there for today, and we'll come back next time. We'll look at verses 28 through 34, and we'll finish it off, this chapter here. But take a look at some of the other genealogies. Compare. Look at the genealogies of Jesus. They're there for a reason too, right? And so think about that as you go through those. And if people claim error, remember that in order to make the claim of error, we have to know why things are written down. So think about that, and I'll meet you back here tomorrow, and we'll take a look at these last few verses.